And welcome back to the show. At the beginning of the year, the Bronx Declaration was initiated. The declaration is serving as an urgent call for all Bronxites to stop fighting and put their collective resources and intellects to use in the elimination of poverty, crimes, and violence. The declaration is reversing the idea which the Bronx being the first in all things bad and last in all things good. The community is fighting to no longer normalize crime, tolerate violence, or accept extreme poverty in the Bronx. The Bronx Declaration shall assist responsible individuals with needed resources while holding accountable irresponsible individuals. Joining me now to share a little bit more about this topic is activist Sheikh Musa Drammeh. And Sheikh, good to have you here on the show.
Hey, thank you so much. I am glad to be back.
Glad to be back. Been a long time in having you, but certainly glad to have you. It's always great to have this conversation. Talk to me a little bit about the Bronx Declaration, because it was initiated, but for people who may not be so familiar, a little bit more on the Bronx Declaration.
Yes, first of all, thank you so much and Happy New Year. Happy New Year to all your guys at BronxNet. Bronx Declaration was made after Brandon Hicks, our pride, a young 17-year-old boy who played by the book, who did everything a mom would expect her child to do. He was the basketball captain of his school. He graduated a week before he was murdered. You know, universities were competing to recruit him. You're talking about a huge potential, a great leader, a beautiful prospect. All of a sudden was eliminated through gun violence right here in the Bronx for the fault of the criminal, not him, because he went to celebrate a birthday celebration with his family. And Brandon is one of hundreds, if not thousands, of New Yorkers who, fall victims to gun violence. So we decided that we are going to galvanize the entire Bronxites, from political leaders, religious leaders, community activists, educators, and parents to come together as one united front and to, face head-on the ravages of violence in general, but gun violence in particular. That was the impetus for declaring Bronx and for launching the Bronx Declaration on the first day of this year on the steps of the Bronx County building.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of young people continue to lose their lives senselessly to gun violence. We're seeing more and more people involved in gun activity. Are you satisfied with what you're seeing by way of policing and community in terms of dealing with the gun violence issue?
The first thing is that for the first time, NYPD is now collaborating with the residents in a more, productive way, meaning the community policing, the NCO. So this is very promising. And I believe that more community members, especially leaders and parents, are getting involved in the work of NYPD because of what they're doing. That's number one. Number two, for the past several years, our elected officials have realized that in order for us to prevent crimes and violence and gun violence, we really have to put money behind grassroots preventive services, because it is the residents who commit crime. If crime is to be stopped or reduced, we have to engage the residents. And in the last several years, both the mayor and the governor have put millions of dollars in terms of cure violence and so many other programs where these young guys, a lot of them, if not most, used to be behind bars, used to be drug dealers, used to be gang members, used to be domestic violence perpetrators. But now they are on the other side of the coin, empowering them, formalizing them, and give them the little bit of money they need to operate is a very smart investment. So these two emerging positive aspects of fighting crime and violence are very, very, good for our communities, and they have already producing positive outcomes. So we're happy about it.
Yeah.
But
So
go ahead.
no, I was going to say, so when you talk about positive outcomes, one of the things that you're actually looking for is peace. And I want to be able to get a chance to talk about peace for a minute. But talk to us about how are you incorporating peace as a part of that dialogue, and how is it being received, particularly on the part of young people?
Thank you for that question. I mean, you know me, everything about me is peace, peace, peace. So, I cannot talk to you without talking about peace. The greatest challenge we have as a nation is we spend so much money in wars and conflicts and fight this, fight that, and we spend very little time, very little resources in community peace building programs. The problem that we have now is that we spend too much money expecting violence and less money building bridges. So the National Community Peacebuilding Commission that we've launched last year was designed to do just that. For example, in the Bronx here, you have very diverse, population. You have the Jews, the Catholics, the Protestants, the Muslims, the Hindus, the Buddhists, you name it. And we normally don't talk to each other until there's a problem. So we've decided that we're not going to do that. We are all Bronxites. We have to talk in advance. We have to get to know each other. We have to build bridges. And the more we know each other, the easier it is to love one another. And I guarantee you one thing, when you love someone, you have a very hard time hurting them. The only time that we don't hesitate hurting other people is if we label them as enemies, as somebody that we should not even care, or as burden. So the program that we launch, in addition to the Bronx Declaration, is to build bridges. How do we do it? There are 61 neighborhoods in the Bronx. These neighborhoods, sometimes it's like day and night. You may go to, let's take Morris Park, for example. Morris Park, you have White Plains Road that divides part of Morris Park. To the north side of Morris Park, crime level is about 5%. To the south side, crime level is 95%. So if you said, oh, we're gonna service Morris Park, but one area contribute 95% of the crime, the other area 5%, you're wasting your resources. What this Community Peacebuilding Commission does is that we have a commissioner that represents the 5% neighborhood and a commissioner that represents 95% neighborhood, so that their reports will be different and their reports will be relevant considering what is going on the ground. Peace building is the most important element of any type of public safety mechanism. Unless residents see each other as neighbors, then unfortunately we see each other as either strangers or worse yet, enemies. And that's when we generalize them in a general term without ever investing time to get to know them. Because when we get to know people, we realize that we have almost identical interests. We want the same thing. But when we don't know them, then we continue labeling them. The Catholics, the Protestants, the Blacks, the whites, without investing time. So this Community Peacebuilding Commission will give us access to get to know individuals and become friends with them, become neighbors, and then it will be difficult to hurt them.
Give me a little bit more on the whole issue of conversation, because there is conversations that have to be had in order for the peace to be enacted. Are we finding now in the midst of COVID that more and more people are having these conversations, or is it a little bit harder to have the conversations because everybody's more concerned about themselves? And when we talk about the Bronx, we know one of the highest hit places when it comes to COVID.
COVID came and did what needed to be done long time ago. Number one, it highlighted the disparities, economic disparities, privilege disparities, educational disparities, health disparities, and all kinds of disparities. Why? because those who have the means, a lot of them actually left areas that are more dangerous. They went to areas where they have second homes and third homes. So people like me, or who cannot go anywhere else, so we have to deal with the issues at hand. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to health disparities, we live in the same exact city. We live in the same neighborhood, but the health disparities are so profound that you think we came from different regions of the world. And through COVID, we find out, this thing was highlighted so prominently that it forces the decision makers to really begin to take, action in terms of healing this divide. And also the educational divide. Individuals who have the means of, having technological infrastructure, when pandemic came, all they did was utilize their knowledge and access. And the other parents who don't even have computers or even internet, they're struggling. The system is struggling to help them. And their children will not benefit as much as the other parents who had the means and access and the ability. So we're using this pandemic to really now send a strong message that is so profoundly highlighted by the pandemic, so that we will know the tale of two cities, two realities, two peoples, and two communities must never ever be accepted, normalized, or allowed to continue. So we're working with elected officials, we're working with religious leaders, we're working with educators. There are several initiatives that have been launched to making sure that all these gaps will be closed, not allowed to widen, not allowed to persist, but will be closed. And I'm sure in the next couple of months and years, you will see the benefits of these, new efforts being made. We have certain bills when it comes to health, public safety, education, and economic development that are now being sponsored by elected officials, because the justification for these bills could not have been more relevant now. And unfortunately, we have lost so many people, but at least the other side of the COVID is that nobody can refute these disparities, and therefore they will be addressed, one issue at a time.
One issue at a time, indeed. Talk to me about where do we go from here? You talk about a commitment to change. How do we get people to make that commitment to change?
Well, in the Bronx, we have two kinds of people in the Bronx. One group, they are highly responsible, they are hardworking, honest, patriotic. They do every single thing to not only protect themselves and their dignity and their families, but they're also neighborly, they're communal, they're inclined to making their environment better environment. That's the first group. The other group are highly irresponsible, regardless of the resources, regardless of the convenience, regardless of what you do for them. They are responsible individuals. So what do we do from here? We work and assist and support responsible parents and adults, responsible individuals. We deal with them in two ways. Well, number one, we provide guidance to them. If they listen, fine. If not, then we have to work with the criminal justice system to deal with them. We work with the Bronx DA. We work with NYPD. We work with every outlet so that we can minimize the damages, emanating out of irresponsible individuals. If you look at the crime rate in the Bronx, they're coming from a very small number of residents, because the majority of Bronxites would never commit a crime, no matter how much poverty they're dealing with. They will not use their poverty situation to commit crime. So that is the way for the future. Help the responsible individuals and deal with irresponsible individuals, and crime will be eliminated so that you can have beautiful socio-economic progress right here in the Bronx.
Yeah. And we're right here in 2021. We're still in the first quarter. Hard to believe that we're almost at the midway point of February, but give me an idea as to what you really are going to be working on as you're working throughout this first quarter of the new year and some immediate plans in the near future?
You know, the three things that the top three priority we need to work on, starting from this Black History Month: education, education, and education. The reason why we are in this bad situation, because unfortunately we have not invested enough resources to provide our students, our families, our children, the type of educational attainment that they deserve. United States is lagging in many areas globally when it comes to science, engineering, math, and technology. Unless we invest enough resources in poor communities, in Black and brown neighborhoods, unfortunately, everything else is just putting a band-aid to the real problem. The foundational progress is education. Good education and good education and good education. Because, Daren, you know that in the last 30 years, the world has changed because of the arrival of information superhighway, what we call the internet. Today, the billionaires are younger, are diverse, and guess what? They're not your typical old white man sitting on Wall Street, offices deciding the world. The world is run by young technology experts. We need to get our children in the Black and brown neighborhoods, schools that provide STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math. Everything else will be addressed.
And so we know that, getting kids involved in STEM is very important. Do you feel as though that more and more kids are going to take advantage of it as we come to a close? Because sometimes it wasn't the most attractive and it wasn't always presented to students as a viable means. But when you look at movies like Hidden Figures, we see where, math can actually take you. Are we going to see probably in the next couple of years an increase, and particularly in the minority community, of those rising to take advantage of STEM?
All these companies are the darling of the world. They are the leaders of the world. And these companies now, they realize in order for them to maintain their competitive advantage, they have to invest in urban communities because they can no longer get enough foreign employees. While they have thousands of Black and brown kids that could be armed with the STEM education. So in the next couple of years, you will see a lot of Black kids and a lot of brown kids will be in charge of these multinational corporations, because these corporations have no choice but to give them what they deserve so that they can continue their competitive advantage. United States still, is the leader in innovation. And in order to maintain that against China and India, and began to have STEM programs in poor communities, every single child, regardless of their background, has the potential to be a next CEO, next great leader. And I promise you, from this time on, they will do that. But we have to educate our parents so that they can learn more about these programs, so that they can, have their children to take advantage of it. There are a lot of great people, including politicians, that are advocating for this program to be implemented. And it's not going to stop. It's going to continue. Because today, the way we consume products and services is completely different from before. And that will not change. Amazon delivers 7 days a week, very efficient. And you can order every single thing that you consume without leaving your home. That will not change.
Indeed, indeed. Sheikh, we got to leave it there. Sheikh Musa Drammeh, our guest here on the Social Justice Forum. Sheikh, thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm back on, BronxNet is my second home. I'm glad to be back. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Glad to have you back on your second home. We want you to know we got more show here on the Social Justice Forum. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back in a few.